They went on the Mayflower and on other ships and they came to US. The people that really, really dared even crossed the United States and ended up at the West Coast. And when I heard Silicon Valley, I was like, of course. So why not? Advanced packaging is a huge topic right now. When I came to US, I had no clue what I was doing. I came to the conclusion our products have to be as bad as possible, as good as necessary.
Oh, wow.
There is so much money in the venture ecosystem that pays for the startups innovating for us. People that are arrogant and that think they know everything. Because startups are always like a step ahead of the current state of the industry. You have to think of every single deal has to have the potential to return the whole fund. We can help them with building their product, introducing them to customers. That I built my own network in Silicon Valley. Seeing startups growing and becoming successful is like raising children. So they rented a wholesale room and it worked. Quantum chips will not be built like semiconductor chips under the quantities in the next 5 to 10 years.
It takes a village to raise a chip.
Welcome Dr. Yvonne Lutsch, a distinguished investment director at Lam Capital, whose career spans more than 2 decades in the dynamic semiconductor industry.
Yvonne is renowned for her profound understanding of both the technological complexities and the market forces shaping this essential sector. She actively seeks out disruptive innovations and addresses the critical need for sustainability in manufacturing.
Prepare to gain unique insights into the challenges and opportunities facing startups, and how strategic capital fuels the advancements of tomorrow's semiconductor world. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome back to the Semiconductor Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Salah Nasri. And whether you're an industry veteran or someone that's just curious about the semiconductor ecosystem, this is your podcast. So without further ado, one key thing that has, of course, come into reality is VC investments all over the semiconductor market. If you look at the top players or the top investments in the world, they are pretty much semiconductor companies. Now, the key question is what's in it for the new upcoming companies? Who is the new Nvidia? Who is the new Apple? That's where VC investments come in handy. And today it is with absolute great pleasure to welcome Yvonne Lutsch, Investment Director of Lam Capital. Yvonne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Salah. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, a sincere pleasure on my side. Yvonne, I think one of the most beautiful things that I can say from my side I have the pleasure of is rubbing shoulders with great leaders and innovators. And now I can say investors as well. Could you give us a brief overview from the beginning? Like how did it all start? How did you start off getting into this industry that we're involved in today?
Sure. So I grew up in a small... No, I'm not studying there.
In a small little village.
So I was with Bosch for many, many years in different executive roles in operations and quality management. And that they asked me actually to, and this was in Germany, and they asked me to take an innovation role here in Silicon Valley to build up an innovation hub. And when I heard Silicon Valley, I was like, of course.
Why not?
So why not? And this is almost 10 years ago. So I came here, started this innovation thing, and I got in contact with startups. I got in contact with this Silicon Valley craziness, with the whole ecosystem.
Yes.
And I wanted to become a VC. This was very clear to me. And then, you have to be at the right time, at the right location. Bosch had a venture office here already. They had an open position. I applied and I got the job. That's 7+ years ago. And then recently I switched over to Lam Research Capital. That's the very short.
Wow. So was Lam Capital already in existence?
Yeah, but Lam Capital, they are a little bit smaller than Bosch Ventures probably and lesser known. The company is also a little bit smaller than Bosch. But they do this, or we do this for around about 8 years already, yes.
Wow. So run through, initially before coming into the VC world, You were also involved in various technology and business development roles in the actual semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem. So how did that prepare you for the VC experience that you were going through?
Yeah, so before I moved to US, I was very operational. But I knew manufacturing of semiconductors, of MEMS, including the packaging. I knew that in and out. When I came to US, I had no clue what I was doing for the first couple of days. And then I figured it out. But since my role was to scout for technologies and to bring innovation or to connect innovators in Silicon Valley to Bosch in Germany, I had to learn, what is a startup? What does Series A funding means? What does a VC do? Where did they get their money from? How do they invest? I had to learn this to some extent, to work with startups and also to evaluate to some extent, does it make sense that Bosch works with a startup or is it dead in 2 weeks? And when Bosch starts engaging with them and then, this doesn't work. So I had to learn it to some extent on a higher level, how venture capital works. And that, of course, was helpful to prepare me to my VC role. And I think that was one reason why they chose me in the first place.
I see. What about in terms of your academia foundation? I mean, you hold a PhD in applied physics and a diploma in experimental physics. So for the students out there watching this, how did your academic training influence your perspective on coming into this industry in the first place and now analyzing industry trends and investment decisions?
Yeah, that's very interesting because, when I joined Bosch, it was just important that I had any academic, science or engineering background because that was just the business we were working in. When I started scouting for startups and when I became a VC, I could actually use my education, my 20 years back education, even more, which was super interesting. Because as a VC, as in deep tech, you have to evaluate new technologies, new startups every single day. And you have to have a high-level understanding of what they are doing from a technology perspective. And if you want to invest in that startup, you also have to do a deep dive. I'm not doing everything myself, but in worst case, I'd say I could. I can read a scientific paper, even if it's painful. I can probably read a patent, even if I don't want to. And it helps me tremendously to evaluate companies. And the other thing is a little bit of tenacity. If you really want to achieve things, that always helps. And that's what you learn in a PhD in the first place. It's about, in Germany, we say frustration tolerance. That's what you learn in a PhD.
Frustration tolerance. That's the first time I heard that.
It's a very German saying.
Okay, frustration tolerance.
And that helps you a lot if you want to achieve hard things. We always like to say, and the finance guys might not agree with that, you're a finance person.
I am a finance person,
okay.
Yeah.
The finance stuff you actually need is so lean because it's a startup, because they don't have, a long financial history. That is something you can learn.
Sure.
But of course, if it comes to very, more complicated transactions, we also have financial people who can help us with that.
I see. So, what I would love to know, as an investment director at Lam Capital, how does your days look like? How does it look? Or let's say, how does your week look like on a Monday and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Yeah. How is it? What happens? What happens in those days?
So actually, I have probably somewhere between 3 to 10, maybe sometimes more meetings with startups per week. Okay. Companies we come across through different channels, and we have one a month, or I invite some people of my group to come to their pitch event. Very often virtual. Sometimes company come to us, or sometimes we meet somewhere here in the valley. And we just listen to their pitch basically and try to have very high level to understand what they are doing. That's one part of the meetings. Of course, there are internal meetings. We have, as the venture group, we want to discuss what we are working on and how we can help each other. And then we also have meetings with Lam internal people to connect them to the startups, to figure out how they can work with the startups, to figure out how we can help them, what we should look out for. And then part of my work is simply, reading stuff, not only the pitch decks, but also like more background information, including the scientific papers sometimes,
Right.
to understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, could you talk about the types of startups and technology domains that you focus on specifically with Lam's investment initiative?
Of course. I mean, we are a deep tech investor in the semi ecosystem. And that includes, and Lam Research is a equipment manufacturer, right? So this includes, from an investment perspective, new materials. That includes some kind of equipment for semiconductor manufacturing, including, how to deposit a layer, how to remove a layer, how to inspect a layer, how to measure the depth of the depth of a layer, all these kind of things. But we also go further downstream, the products that can be produced with these machines. Advanced packaging is a huge topic right now. It's a very well topic. So that's like the whole chain from raw material to the product level. That's one thing we are looking at. But there are also some other areas we're looking at. That's like sustainability in the semiconductor ecosystem, whether this is power, like using power conservation or water abatement or other things in the abatement space. Or we also look into areas like robotics and AI, both for our own products, like for our own manufacturing, but also for Lam products that include robotics and AI.
I see. So, I mean, of course, one element and one needs to take into consideration is that deep tech ventures often involve longer timelines. And of course, higher capital needs as well. What criteria or frameworks do you use to assess whether the potential rewards justify these higher risk investments that you're working with?
Yeah. So because we are a corporate VC, a CVC, we have this connection to the mothership and we want to be useful for Lam. So that kind of gives us a very, very good guidance in companies we want to invest in. If there is an opportunity for Lam to collaborate with the startup, then this is a very good sign for this might be a good investment for several reasons. One reason is if we can really help the startup to accelerate and to excel, then the startup has a better chance to become successful. So this makes our bet, the financial return and this venture more likely. On the other hand, the startup also can give us insights into the future because startups are always a step ahead of the current state of the industry. So the startup can show us where Lam has to develop its product to become and stay future-proof. And if these two things are coming together, that's almost a match made in heaven. And of course, we also look into the financial return. That means we also, independently of the collaboration with Lam, we also look for how big is this market segment? How big can this company become? Is this a red ocean, or is this the only company, which is sometimes also not good? So we also evaluate that.
Right. And, so having led investments as well at Bosch Ventures prior to Lam Capital, are there any notable differences in the investment philosophy or fund structure or approaches that you've observed?
Yeah, there are many. And this was one of the reasons why I switched over to Lam, because it's just interesting to see how another company does it. Okay. At Bosch, Bosch still is very independent from the mothership, even though all investments have a strategic relevance. But the focus is more on the financial return. At Lam, we are more invested and interested in the cooperation. And that's just what it is. And I think both approaches are good. Bosch has its own fund, so you can also measure the fund performance. At Lam, we are off balance sheet, but that also means that our check sizes theoretically don't have a limit. If you see something that is super strategic, and for some reason we have not heard of that company before, we can, in theory, write pretty large checks if you think this is super interesting.
Right.
Interesting. So we are also working together relatively close with corp development. At Bosch, this was a separate entity, but I think it makes sense to make this together.
Yeah. I mean, what would be interesting is to understand is that, out of all, I mean, people are always pitching you. Do you get tired of these pitches of doing so many? Because you're doing so much volume. That's what I've learned from the VCs.
It's not about getting tired because of the volume. It's only, there's better and worse pitches and better and worse ideas, and people you like more than others.
Sure. Are there certain traits that you look for? I'd be intrigued. Is there certain, what do you look for, from your experience, Yvonne? Are there certain personalities traits that stand out for you over the company personality traits? Have you ever seen someone that comes in and pitches something that is better than sliced bread, all right? But their personality trait is cure to insomnia.
Yeah, the insomnia thing is not the worst.
Okay.
Because if someone has a really, really good technology and can listen, you can teach people a lot. But if people are super arrogant and they think they sell sliced bread, but it's not, or it's it's really sliced bread in terms of everyone buys it and it's everywhere. And there's 5,000 other companies also making sliced bread. And they're still too arrogant to see what's going on around them. That's something I don't value that much.
Sure. It reminds me of, have you heard of the X Factor? The X Factor. It's it's in England, we have it. I'm sure we have it in Germany.
Is music?
It's the America's Got Talent, music. And you have Simon Cowell and all of these judges, and you have sometimes you have some people that get on the stage, they think they say they're the best singer ever. They compare themselves to even Michael Jackson, and then they get on the stage and perform, and your ears want to fall off.
Yeah, and the other ones that come humble and then
blow you away.
Blow you. Yeah, that's the one I want to see. Right?
Have you experienced that in your time?
People that blow me away.
Yeah, that come in humble. You're oh, what is he good or she gonna pitch, and then boom, they.
Yeah, that happens. It happens. Well, and especially when company you interact with them only via email, and maybe they send you a preliminary pitch deck, and you think oh my goodness, and then they pitch you, and they have a very, very welcoming personality, and they can explain in person much, much better than what is on the slides.
Yes.
This can help a lot. Yeah.
Okay, could you give us an example of maybe a moment where have you ever had goosebumps where someone got on the stage and you were
I would not go that far.
Wow, okay, because it's technology, right? Okay. All right, could you give us an example where you were wowed? Someone got on and you were they got up on in front of you, had the meeting, you were wow, this is something that we need to jump on. Has that happened yet?
I think so. I don't have a concrete example right now, but yeah.
So it happens.
That happens.
Okay. So, all right, let's talk about the hands-on experience that you had. So during your tenure at Bosch, you served in engineering, manufacturing, technology scouting, and business development roles.
Don't forget about quality management.
And quality management. That's also another serious one, yes. I mean, could you highlight a few lessons that you learned in those different roles that still guide your VC approach there?
Yeah. And I was thinking about this a little bit. And especially because I was in different quality management roles in automotive and also in consumer electronics. And especially at Bosch, it's all about quality. That's why people are coming to the company.
Absolutely.
It took me years to figure out, well, you can produce the absolute best quality, but no one is willing to pay for it.
That's true. Under what basis, Yvonne? Is it they're not willing to pay because they don't know about it, or they just don't want to pay for good quality?
At the end, Bosch is selling parts, whether they go in a smartphone, whether they go in a car. And on the other side, there's procurement guys, and they are negotiating prices. And if you tell them you get like the part, twice as reliable as it is for twice the cost, they look at you as if you are
Crazy.
They don't pay for it. They have their budget. They have their, they have their budget and that's it. In automotive, of course, they are trying to push more and more and more, but also same in consumer. But this became one of my mottos in the consumer electronics industry, actually. I came to the conclusion our products, and I told this loud to my boss, and he looked at me as if I am crazy. Our product has to be as bad as possible, as good as necessary.
Oh, wow. That's as bad as possible and good as necessary.
Because then you are producing the best quality as the lowest price.
Because that's the commodities game, right?
Yes. I mean, even if you think you have a super, super unique technology, at the end, it becomes a commodities game so quickly. And it is also something, I try to give to the startups. I mean, not as bad as possible, but think about what the customer really, really needs. So, because technologists love to over-engineer. Right. They love to over-specify. And if your customer is not willing to pay for it, then you are delivering a over-complicated or an over-engineered product, which is too expensive. And then you are disappointed because you do not get customers. So think about what you can get rid of or how to make it as simple as possible.
Why do they do that? Why do they over-engineer? Why do they...
I mean,
what's behind it?
Why do
they...
This is how we are trained as engineers. Sure. We are not trained for reality.
That's sure. And that takes me back. I mean, this is where what they call value creation, right? I think when you have too many options, it's hard to make a decision. But if you simplify the options,
and value is everything between the best product, but also the best price or the shortest lead time, or there's many factors that define value.
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of the technology scouting perspective, so in what ways did your work scouting new technologies drive initiatives at Bosch? Was there something that you found that you're so proud of and say, yeah, I'm implemented that at Bosch?
I mean, there are some examples. I mean, there are not many because it's really, really hard. But there were some examples where we came across a startup, or the startup actually found us or me, and we started talking. And I figured out, well, this actually solves a real problem that is currently not solvable within the Bosch, within the product group. And we connected them. They started talking, and of course, it took forever. This was an automotive.
Right.
But I don't know, after 2 years, I think this startup product became a part of a Bosch product, which is super cool.
Do you think, Yvonne, from your perspective, that at large companies in general, they should all have a VC part?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether it's necessary and has to be a VC arm. There are different kind of instruments. There's VC, there is venture clienting, there is internal venture building. There's all different kind of instruments. I think VC is very good to see what's going on the outside. Everyone, I think, should do it, especially the deep tech firms like Lam, like Bosch, who have their own engineers, but they think they can do everything in-house.
Right.
And probably they can, but it's not the most efficient way. And it's not the fastest way for sure. Because startups can iterate just much, much faster. They can develop products much, much faster. Because they don't have the bureaucratic overhead large organization has. And they got money from other people. That is something some corporates still don't get. There is so much money in the venture ecosystem that pays for the startups innovating for us. You have to think about that. Right. So it's almost like a third-party paid innovation.
So it's a very interesting analysis. It's a circle.
It's more than a circle. It's an
ecosystem.
It's an ecosystem, and it's a source of free capital for the corporates to get innovations. Of course, at some point you have to pay for some of it, but But the whole ecosystem, all the startups that are trying out in this sandbox-like environment, you can call Silicon Valley like a very sophisticated sandbox, right? Where people try out new things. And this is financed by the VC ecosystem. That's awesome.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. So we live in a world now, Yvonne, where disruptions are happening when you least expect it. Yeah. How do these macro trends shape your investment decisions? I mean, let's say, for example, the chip crisis that we had, the shortage, and now with tariffs. How does that influence your decisions, though?
All these external factors influence our decisions. Some investments seem to be good a year ago, and now they are not. Or a couple of years ago. Currently, it's super difficult to invest in China or to invest together with Chinese investors. 5 years ago or 10 years ago, this was not a topic at all. Chip shortage or the whole supply chain shortage, of course, makes us rethink whether we should invest in more domestic supply, and there is a big trend in investing in the domestic supply chain, and then there's other investors doing that, so we're not alone. That's important.
Yeah.
Of course, it all influences our decisions.
Yeah. I think when
new industries are born overnight, right? Like the data center, everyone now talks about the AI data center, and it's real. I mean, you saw the talks about how much more power we need in the next 5 years, and 2030 is only 5 years away.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Yeah, don't get me started. That is a very interesting point. And one key thing that I would, of course, be intrigued to hear from your perspective is that how does it work from your vision? Your perspective, like you coming from a CVC perspective versus a VC. What's the difference from that point of view? There must be some sort, because I feel like there's more of a safety net with a CVC than a VC. Is that right to say?
I think it all depends. There's no one clear answer. I think the best consortium or syndicate for a startup and investment syndicate is a mix of both. Having deep-pocketed financial VCs that can carry the startup to the exit is super helpful. And they have probably connection even, to other VCs, later stage, even, the pockets are getting bigger, the VCs are getting bigger.
Yeah.
We bring, the validation that the company is real and their value they are producing is real, and that we can even help them with that, and we can help also to show the ecosystem and the other VCs that we are bad with the technology, and then we believe in it. So I think it just goes hand in hand with financial VCs and CVCs, especially in deep tech. And there are some deep tech VCs. I mean, there are not too many, but we know many of them, and most of them are connected to them.
Yeah.
And work with them.
Yvonne, beyond semiconductors, which emerging fields such as AI, quantum, industrial automation do you see having the most transformative impact over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think AI is there already, and this will also transform our lives even further.
Sure.
Whether good or in a bad way, all of it probably. I'm also excited about quantum. I think, I was slightly quantum believer, then I became very, very skeptical. And now I'm talking to more companies again. It is probably less relevant for Lam because quantum chips will not be built like semiconductor chips on the quantities in the next 5 to 10 years. But I think I still again believe that in the next 10 years there will be useful quantum computers. And they can do, very, very different things in a very meaningful way, which is super, super exciting.
I see. Have you seen a quantum computer in real life?
I did.
They are
2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And this was very interesting because this was a startup who wants to prove that they build like very small, a very compact quantum computer, and that this quantum computer can be put into a data center next to like an AI data center or a regular data center so they can share workloads. And they wanted to prove it, so they rented a hotel room
Oh, really?
Like this one. And then they put like their rack scale quantum computer in a hotel room, and it just plugged to 10 power, and it works.
It works. Wow.
Well, what can you do with 6 qubits? Not a notch, but it works.
Wow. So they're at a start. So
And this was a super interesting demo, because I was wondering, why do they do this in the hotel room? Like, exactly for that reason. There is no double wall. There is no inert of us behind, because it's in a rented hotel room.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, as I mentioned,
Conference room.
yeah, as I mentioned, I went to Rigetti. I went to their site and I saw the machine. This is a remarkable. I mean, it's a massive fridge that they have. It's like a white. It's incredible. And
There is superconducting.
So
You're superconducting 15 millikelvin. So just to get the things cold, it's
the engine must be draining though.
but energy intensive, but it's also like, it's just from an engineering perspective, it's just challenging. But there are other approaches like electron spin or ion traps that are much warmer. They can operate at 500 millikelvin or 1 Kelvin, which is like almost like water.
So what made you, this is now very interesting, I would love to find your answer to this, is what made you transition from being a quantum skeptic to a quantum close-to believer?
Just the signals you see at top of startups, and you see how far they come.
Okay.
Yeah. It's yeah. And that's why I still talk to them, just to
keep up to date,
to stay on top of things. Yeah, at least there's some as much as I can.
Are you more optimistic than Jensen? Because Jensen says it's not going to come until like 10 to 15 years. You think it could come later?
I think there is no big disagreement in terms of what she said and what I think or what other startups are saying. There's like universal quantum computers, and that can be everything, and full fault tolerant. I think that's also what Jensen said. They are probably more than 10 years ago.
Right.
But small quantum computers where you can do some stuff with it, that might be earlier.
Wow. I think do you think they'll be able to replace?
No, it will always augment existence.
Be complementary.
It's really very complementary. I mean, replacing, I don't know. Everything you say when it's kept more than 5 years away is wrong anyway.
Yeah. Things can change very fast. So another interesting thing for those who are not aware of how Lam Capital runs its initiatives is, do you focus primarily on early stage startups, or do you also invest in more mature companies?
We do a little bit of everything. We also talk to very early stage startups, and we invested in some C stage startups that had already a very early product. They could show us that things already work, something our engineers could, touch or could work with. But we also invested in companies, in the Series C round, when we thought, well, they are at a super interesting inflection point and we want to be part of their journey. So we are, and as I said, by the off balance sheet, so we are relatively check size agnostic.
I see. What's your red flags when it comes to certain companies that come up that you see? What's the red flags that stand out for you?
People that are arrogant and that think they know everything. Especially.
We saw a couple of them last week.
And
anyway.
and you remember this one specific occasion where I challenged the CEO about how unique their solution is.
Yes.
And I mean, and I had other occasions where CEOs were basically bashing their competitors. We talk to the competitors. We know more than the CEO. So when the CEO tells us the competition, no, it's nothing, they kind of insult me.
Oh, correct. I see.
That's the worst you can do.
Yeah, it's definitely a no-go. And what are your green flags? What makes it what makes a certain company stand out for you when you see it?
I mean, companies is where, it fits it is still relatively early, humble people, a very super engaged team, but also some experience. People that are, open to listen, but still, it's the balance of listening, but knowing what they are doing, being early, but late enough to have something tangible. having a big market chance, but still being relatively cheap, what we like to say, right? Not a super expensive team. Having all these balances, I mean, that's awesome, right? But it's very hard.
Sure. From your perspective, I'll also be interested to know is how does the stage of a startup influence your criteria for due diligence and partnership?
It is. I mean, where the startup is very early, then probably the due diligence has to be more on the technical side, because we have to figure out ourselves whether it works, because if we don't have any paid customers, if the startup is further down the road and they have already paid customer, it apparently works, and the due diligence is more on, on the market and how well are they actually, can they scale beyond the existing customers? And if they're very early, I mean, they probably need less money. We always want to be a minority and a pretty low minority investor for several reasons. So then, the bigger the company is, that you want to have some ownership. If you have at 0.01% ownership, then it's not meaningful. So that's kind of, defines on where we do the diligence and how if it checks out.
I see. And of course, venture capital isn't just about providing money or funding. So from your perspective, I mean, how do you and your team? I'm sorry.
And that also fits to your former question, right? It was, if the startup was very early, then we can help them also a different way. We can help them with technology support. We can help them with building their product, introducing them to customers. If a company is already later, then we have to think differently about the strategic fit for it. Then we can, I don't know, can we help them expand to other countries or in different industries?
So they do like a sweat equity type of perspective, or
a little bit, yes. I mean, we want to have a little bit of skin in the game.
So one key thing that would be vital to, of course, mention is that, and I'm going back to my program, my leadership program, executive leadership program. So we had a professor called E.S. Strugoyev, who got this great book called Your Venture Mindset. And he was saying that he outlined what makes a VC successful, or any CVC or VC successful. And it was laid down as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different type of ends. But what the first point, which was like this big, and the second graph was about that big. And the first part was, guess what would you think? Guess what would it be? First, the most important asset or trait that any VC must have to be successful.
A VC?
Yeah, VC or CVC involved. It caught me off guard. It was professional network. He was saying that is the most thing. So I wonder from your side, is that true in your world from a corporate venture capital perspective?
I mean, it goes hand in hand with experience, because I wanted to say experience, because you can read as many books as you want. If you don't do the experience yourself, you are kind of, I know this better, I know better, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But did you feel the pain, specifically the pain of things that are not going the right way? That's how we learn. And your network can help you for sure to avoid the worst mistakes. Because all VCs, not all, but many VCs, and that applies the same for CVCs. We talk to other VCs. We stick our brains together. We are taught you ideas. What do you think? Where do you see the flaws? Who do you know who can be a good reference to talk, a customer reference? Not the reference the startups are giving you, but the references you find yourself. Market validation. Talking to market leaders, like you invite, people to your conference to talk about where's the future of AWS data centers or Microsoft. All these things are important, and this is all through your network. Yeah, it's probably a very tiny. Okay.
But then, and another key thing that caught me off guard about the structure, he was talking about the if you have But the key is to have 30 investments. So I'm going back if I was listening to my classroom. If you have 30 investments, one must be a home run. And the other 29 can fail.
Yeah.
Do you get away with that type of mercy?
So I have not done 30 deals yet. So the statistics. I mean, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 10. It always depends on how early you invest,
Right.
and how many risks are you willing to take. But that's the mindset you have to have in mind. Yes, the 21, and the one is the home run. The home run it has to return, all the investments of all the 30 deals, plus, the interest rate you want to see on top to ensure a good investment insurance case. Yes. So that's how VCs very often actually evaluate deals, especially financial VCs. You have to think of every single deal has to have the potential to return the whole fund. That's how people talk about the 100x. I want to see a potential about the company that is worth today 20 million, that it becomes, what is 100? A $2
billion company.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't invest.
Wow.
And that's what and the startups think like 10x is good.
Yeah.
But the 10x is not sufficient to carry all the others that are, from my perspective as a VC, that are not going out. They're not going to work.
I did not know that. Something new about that. Thank you. How was it? I mean, have you experienced that yet, where you've had one of your investments flop?
Yes.
How does it feel?
Very bad.
Right.
And I mean, some people, are less close to it, or let things not getting as close to them as they should. And I'm not that good at this.
Wow.
And you learn over time, but it doesn't feel good. Because I ask myself, what did I do wrong, right? But I can also blame the startup that fixated bomb. But maybe could I help that? Could I have helped them better? Could I have helped them? Could I have avoided it? That's what you always ask yourself if you are a self-reflective person.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think you have one of the funnest jobs in the world, where you meet interesting people, meet interesting pitches as well, and all of this stuff. But I think it comes with a territory.
Yeah.
Because that one. I'm just looking at it on a personal basis, just my stock investments. When it's a red day, I don't feel good that day. I don't like to look at it. Yeah. So when you've lost all the money or the invested, it can play a mental role, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more in terms of guidance for aspiring entrepreneurs. This goes back to my classes with Professor Ilya. He said something really interesting. He said that when a startup comes to a VC or a CVC and asks for money, the chances are very low if they just focus purely on the money, on the investment. But if they go to a CVC or a VC and ask for advice, the chances of getting money is higher. How does that relate to you in that message?
I mean, to some, it's very funny that you mentioned this. I mean, to some extent, advice is free. Money is not free. And I mean, that's also how I operate with, in my network very often. I ask people for advice because you make someone a compliment the second you ask them for advice. And that opens doors, that opens a mind, that opens a personality.
Right. Or humility.
Yeah.
So what advice then would you offer to hardware or deep tech founders who are seeking future investments?
Well, there's many.
Any do's or don'ts?
There's one thing I already mentioned. On the one hand, of course, you have to focus on your own innovation, but on the other hand, don't ignore the competition. Okay. And even though, especially as a deep tech founder, from a very deep tech technological perspective, your solution might be different. But from a customer higher up in the market perspective, it's kind of the same, because it solves the same problem, even though the solution is different. So even though the solution is different, as long as it solves the same problem, it's your competitor. So take them into consideration and make it very clear why you are better. That's it.
It's straightforward as that. And then from your personal perspective with Lam, looking ahead, I'm going to sound like your boss maybe, is what are your short-term and long-term ambitions for your role at Lam Capital?
I'm short term is simply just doing a couple of more deals because that kind of oils the machine, like my own investment machine and also like the companies. And long term, I mean, we or myself, I just want to have a bigger impact at Lam Research. I still feel that, there's more work we can do in telling Lam Research people why venture capital is a good idea in the first place and why we should embrace innovation from the outside and making Lam more transparent for open innovation. That will be my lifelong vision.
I think one key thing that a lot of course that run with you, Yvonne, is that a lot of VCs now are playing this role where they're hanging around universities or having some sort of partnership with universities. Does that not saturate the market or all these, because everyone's doing the same thing? So how do, a startup out there that has so many options, for example, and is looking for the right strategic partners, one would say, to choose from, if everyone's following the same technique, if that makes sense?
I think it will increase the very, very super early stage markets. I think there's ever saturation because there's so many VCs. And there's, and specifically the growth in like pre-seed. I mean, pre-seed is now a thing, right? 5-10 years ago, now I'm not talking about pre-seed. There's pre-seed funds, on and on. And for me, I embrace it because as long as the pre-seed funds go to university, they do the hard work. They find good technology. They make it as early stage startups. They help scientists to become early stage entrepreneurs. Why not? I think that's great because there is and always was a lot of university research that just got shelved, and there might be some big losses.
Fair. Yvonne, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on the Semiconductor Leadership Podcast. I have 2 questions I would love to ask you. Is, what do you hate about your job?
That I have to say no to so many people.
Yeah, it can be rejections.
Right, even rejections can be tough.
And on the positive, what do you love about your job?
Seeing startups growing and becoming successful. It's like raising children.
Yeah. It's the best way to describe it. Maybe a little bit easier than raising up.
That's why I became the VC and not a knife.
At least you're helping more children. You're helping more. You're the cape that you can scare people.
I can see it.
You can scare it much better. Yvonne, we have a tradition on the show. The last interviewer leaves a question for the next one.
Oh,
the next person, right? And the last person left you this question. What are you most proud of in your life?
That I built my own network in Silicon Valley.
Wow. Was it a hard task or easy task?
I think it was in the beginning. It was hard.
Oh. How did you do it?
Just go out.
Yeah, do it. It's the best place to do it. There's no place like it in the world.
Hard to do it.
Why don't we have that type of buzz in Europe?
The density is not there.
What does that mean?
The density of startups, VCs. I mean, you go out there and you go to the pool area and come in the business. Strange. I mean, it's just not the case. It's a density, and it's very hard to create density.
Would you say that it's also because of a culture that is risk averse?
I mean, here it's just so many factors came together by chance. All the silicon, semiconductor industries, universities, and the VCs came, and all of it came together. You can build such an ecosystem somewhere else, but you need all of the ingredients You need the industry, you need the money, you need probably even the weather. And you need time. I mean, to build this also took 50, 80 years. Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley like the name in the 70s. It's 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And some VCs, they reach back to the 30s, 40s.
Yeah. It is. But the most bizarre thing is, we still have great companies in Europe that are being created, but they're too old. There's no new companies that have come up, right? And I think here there's just an appetite for it. There's an appetite. Here, the thing is...
There's also a cultural aspect that is different here. I mean, I always like to, the people who dared, they went on the Mayflower and on other ships and they came to US. The people that really, really dared even crossed the United States and ended up at the West Coast.
Wow.
So this all the, I'm from, not me personally because I didn't grow up here, but like the mentality is like the most adventurous people. They ended up on the West Coast. It is what it is.
I did not reflect on that. Wow. Marvelous.
And maybe only the crazy at the outliers, right?
Yeah. Yvonne, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know about Lam Capital's approach or your personal journey to wrap up this?
We are there. We are an active investor. I think we are still not known everywhere, so it's just good, to have the chance here to talk about Lam Capital a little bit. Mm-hmm. Look us up under lamcapital.com. I think the dash in the middle. And we're biting on LinkedIn and reach out.
Marvelous. Yvonne, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for all your insights. To everyone that's watching this live and direct, please click on that subscribe button. The more followers we get, we've done incredibly well. The more capability I'll be able to get great guests like Yvonne on this show. So if you want to contact Yvonne, you can contact her right here on the link below right here. And as we always say, it takes a village to raise a chip. So keep on innovating and keep on sharing. Until next time, see you at the next show. Bye for now.